There are two features that have a lot to tell us about how young babies learn. The first one is that language learning, while we usually think of social, emotional factors being controlled by the right hemisphere of the brain, and language and logic and mathematics being controlled by the left hemisphere of the brain, what we saw in this experiment is that these are merged, and I'll show you brain images that will convince you of this in a bit, that the social brain is in control. Babies don't learn unless there's a social context. We demonstrated in studies exposing American babies to Mandarin in Seattle, babies who had never heard a foreign language before, came into the lab for 12 sessions in which they played on the floor with a native-speaking Mandarin speaker, 12 sessions over about a month's time, right at the critical period. And a control group came into the lab and played with the American graduate students' books and toys, but had no exposure to Mandarin. And what we saw, I'll show you what that session looked like in a second. We compared that to a group who watched the very same thing over a beautiful DVD. The graduate students said, oh my gosh, that DVD is so clear and it's so much simpler than the it's so messy when kids are in the room and they're two babies and they're all, interacting. I think it's going to be harder, the graduate students would say, to learn in the live situation than in the television situation. Just the opposite occurred. There was no evidence of learning in the audio only, the video only. They looked just like the control kids who heard English from the American students. The babies who were exposed live to a speaker of a foreign language with all the activity that went on, they learned so well in 12 sessions over a month's time, they were exactly statistically equivalent to the babies in Taiwan or China who had been listening to that language for 10 months. The lesson here is that you give the brain what it's interested in at a particular time in development, and the growth and the learning is absolutely phenomenal. So let me show you what these sessions look like. Okay, so how's your Mandarin coming along? So the message here is that the baby brain, like all of our brains, are highly social. The social world is the gateway through which cognition occurs early in development. We can't forget this when we think about how babies are taken care of. That there are new studies demonstrating that the amount of television exposure in infancy is very, very important to language development. So if you just take raw numbers of hours that children are exposed to videos under the age of 16 months, for every hour additional in the week, so many parents are putting their children in front of what they think of as educational videos to do whatever. And what we see are there are 5 less words that the child knows at 16 months for every hour more of video that the child is put in front of.